Alright, let's get into part 2 of my reaction to PSG winning the Champions League. Let's get into it. So look, if you haven't seen my part 1 already, part 1 is all about giving them flowers, giving Luis Enrique his well-deserved flowers. And yeah, like I said, if you haven't checked it out already, hit my main profile and go and check it out. But if you have seen it already, let's get into what I really think as an Arsenal fan. So look, I know this stat was going around and doing the odds during the Champions League final. Well, after the Champions League final win for PSG. Like it says here, Arsenal in 3 occasions out of 3 had a better XG than PSG did when we faced them in each of those occasions. Obviously, the results of those were that we won in the group stage and then lost in both legs of the semi-final. Now look, I'm not going to simply just sit here and say, oh yeah, our XG was better, we should have been there, blah blah blah, because I know a lot of you are going to try and jump on my back for that. But what I will say, as an Arsenal fan, seeing how PSG just dealt with Inter Milan and how we, as basically a skeleton squad, yeah, sure, we fell short in the semi-final, but we still brought it to them to an element. And just thinking, if certain margins had fell our way, if certain chances were put away, how we would have been in this final potentially over PSG. And that's not to throw shade at them. They deserved that win. They beat us fair and square, and they beat Inter Milan very fair and very square. So I will still give them their flowers. It's just me as an Arsenal fan expressing a little bit of regret of how it wasn't us this time around. One thing I will dispel is this whole notion of like this shift away from Galacticos football and this kind of almost underdog story that we're trying to be sold about PSG. Because that's exactly what was being peddled to us. Oh, they went away from Messi, Mbappe, Neymar and these names, and they went for young talent, almost like trying to pitch it like they went for academy talent. And look, the numbers speak for themselves. That's the yearly wage bill, 650 mil to 150 for Inter Milan in euros, and then that transfer spend in the past 2 seasons, yeah, it's dwarfing it. And again, this is not me discrediting their win. It's not me telling anyone not to be impressed by that performance, but let's call it fair. It's not an underdog story. They have spent very heavily in the past 2 seasons. In fact, here's how I'll compare it. In 2 seasons worth of transfer windows, they have spent the equivalent of what Arsenal have spent during Mikel Arteta's time at the club. And bearing in mind, he had to do a rebuild job in that time. So yes, you do have to spend money if you do want to win things. As I've maintained throughout all of my points, both good and bad for PSG, they deserve to win this. He deserves it, Luis Enrique. So fair